Hello and welcome to Communication Connection. I'm Terry Likes. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, the fall semester is underway here on campus. A lot of exciting things are happening. We're certainly glad to have all the students back. Alumni are making their way back too, and that's because it is football season, and we are proud and pleased to have our guest today is a football and basketball announcer from Mississippi State, Neil Price. Neil, thank you so much for joining us. It's an exciting time for you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, with everybody back, football's back too, and we're right in the thick of it. You know, first football game was first Saturday of this month, and they'll have another one here at home end of the month, one every week in September. So whether we were ready or not, it's here.
Well, it's all of the excitement of Saturday down south, isn't it? The SEC football is king, and we are delighted to have everyone back here on campus and a season underway. But first, let's talk a little bit about your background. You're not originally from here. As I said, you are a friend of the program. You've even taught some classes in the communication program. We appreciate that. But originally from Tennessee, and you attended Middle Tennessee State University, correct? That's how you got started.
I did. It seems like eons ago. Back in the early 2000s, I got a junior college degree, associate's degree from Walter State Community College in my hometown of Morristown. And then I transferred to Middle because of the communication program, and was fortunate there to have some wonderful professors. Radio was what I always wanted to do. And at that time at Middle, they had a great television program, but they had two professors in particular that had radio backgrounds. One that was a station owner and a manager named Roger Heinrich, who's still teaching there today, and who actually helped me the one semester that I taught as an instructor in the department here, helped me get a syllabus together and show me what to do. And the other was a guy named Bob Pondillo. And Dr. Pondillo has since retired, but he was on WNBC before it became WFAN, and would tell these wonderful stories about walking through 30 Rock and seeing Howard Stern and David Letterman and any of the NBC stars that would walk through that building on a daily basis. And he did it at the highest level in terms of being a disc jockey and having to balance knowledge of music plus entertaining an audience, and talked about the real stress that came with all of that. And I think some applies to what I do now. But those two in particular were wonderful instructors that laid a great foundation for me, helped me understand the basics. And in the program at Middle, I just got a lot of hands-on experience that at that time wasn't really common. I think a lot of it was taught out of the book. It was theory. So it was good to be able to have those experiences, and I certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today had I not had those.
Well, so you took that experience in having it at Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at Middle Tennessee State University, and moved on to Lexington, Kentucky, where you're part of the UK team. So taking it up a notch and moving from mid-level to a major conference and major conference announcing.
Yeah, and I guess I should point out too that during that time at Middle, not only was the education I got in the classroom valuable, but I was given opportunities there to be on their radio network. So I was a women's basketball play-by-play announcer. I was a baseball play-by-play announcer. I did sideline reports for football, hosted a pregame and postgame show, all at 20 to 23 years old. So it was a great experience, but I made a lot of mistakes during that time too. I got called into the athletic director's office a few times, and he questioned my decision making on things. That's good. It's good to make mistakes because you learn from them. I learned enough in a 3-year stretch there that when the baseball play-by-play job at Kentucky opened in 2005, I had a lot of tape. I knew enough people who had connections to the folks running the UK network at that time that I could get in front of someone for an interview. And luckily was able to get the job. And when I went there, I thought I was only going to be doing baseball. They asked if I'd be interested in doing women's basketball games too, to which I said sure, because that meant it was going to pay enough it could be a full-time job. And when I went there, I don't think I ever could have imagined being there 12 years, because when you're young, you're foolish and you think, I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out and move on to the next thing. And it was wonderful. And had the job here at State not come along in 2017 to do football and men's basketball, I don't know that I still wouldn't be in Lexington, because I just had a great experience. I met my wife there, have a lot of friends there. My wife's family is in Eastern Kentucky. So that was a great time in my life, and I'm glad that I still get to see those people once or twice a year.
So you talked about coming to Mississippi State. Tell us about that transition, the opportunity that arose, and certainly, as everyone knows, you took over for a legend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jim Ellis was here for 6 years following Jack Crystal. And Jim and Jack, as an outsider coming in, I didn't know Jack, but I had known Jim through doing baseball. And I think that those two guys are kind of the same in the eyes of state fans because they were together for so long in the booth. So Jim kind of stepped in when Jack's health began to fail back in 2012, 2011. He did 6 years where he did all three sports. He did football, men's basketball, and baseball. If you've never done that, it's an incredible task. And Jim did it with great professionalism, great grace, and he truly followed an icon. I mean, Jack Crystal did the games at State for 58 years. I mean, that's a long, long shadow, and I'm still in some of that too. But yes, there's a standard here. I think if there was a Mount Rushmore of SEC broadcasters, Jack Crystal would be firmly cemented on there. So you have to live up to that standard. And Jack received great advice from Dudy Noble, who was the athletic director at Mississippi State in 1953 when Jack was hired. He said, I want you to tell the radio audience who has the ball, what the score is, how much time's left, and cut out the bull. Great advice. I don't know what Dudy Noble knew about broadcasting, but that's great advice for somebody stepping into that role. And I think that's kind of the standard you're following if you're a guy like me who's stepping into that too. Our fans for so long have been used to that. So that's what I try to do, live up to that standard. It's been wonderful. I always wanted to do SEC football. I still pinch myself sometimes. I did, Saturday when Memphis was here to start the year. I'm sure I will do it again when we get into the SEC games here coming up in October. I can't believe that I get to do this. This is my job. It's really something.
Well, you're doing something that a lot of students around the country aspire to do, but people don't move on, as you said. Jack in the role for 58 years, Jack Buck with the St. Louis Cardinals for all those years, and Harry Carey, and so many on and on and on. So I know it's quite a privilege, and I know you're glad to be able to do something that you've wanted to do for a long time. You mentioned the SEC. We're in the heart of the football season. A lot has been talked about for months and months and months leading up to these games. We've got some great home games against Texas A&M, Arkansas, Auburn, and Georgia. That alone right there is a gauntlet that most teams don't have to face, much less the games on the road that we have. So it is murderer's row when it comes to a schedule.
Well, I joke with people a lot that you've got to have a little bit of ham in you to do what I do. And I tell them that I'm kind of like Sinatra. I like to work a big room. And there's not a much bigger room in college football than the SEC West. All the teams that you mentioned, State plays every single year. You've got the only game in town on Thanksgiving night every single year with regard to college football. So it's really cool. And all the games mean something. And I think from my perspective, knowing that that's always in the back of your mind, you prepare and you work a little bit harder because you know that the game's important. It's important to the players, it's important to the fans in particular, and you want to do the best you can for those who can't be there to help them be part of it. So I keep that in mind a lot. I do. And, there's no place like Davis Wade Stadium. It's a great office. The cowbells make it unique. I tell people we have the most unique radio mix in all of sports because of the cowbells. And I know that there are people who aren't State fans who feel differently about the cowbells, but I think it's one of the greatest traditions in football. It truly sets this place apart.
It has to be exciting. I know it is as a fan, but when you're at the game, and certainly from your vantage point up in the press box, you've done the pregame, you're leading up to kickoff, and all of a sudden there's just that different feeling. And you have to feel the tingling of the excitement of nothing better than an SEC game on a Saturday.
And you have to balance that too, because I was guilty of this as a young broadcaster, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm still not guilty of it today. That big moment will happen, and you want to be like any other fan, and you just want to scream. And from a professionalism standpoint, you're not really serving the audience very well because they don't understand what's going on because you're yelling at the top of your lungs. So you have to find a way to kind of harness all that excitement and all that energy and control your voice through that to still convey it, show people that you're excited, but at the same time do it in a way that they can understand it. That's a slippery slope sometimes, especially when you're working for a team and not being there as a third party. But yeah, there's nothing like it. I love Saturday. I work really hard through the week to get to that point with preparation, reading, going to press conferences, going to practice, talking to players, talking to coaches, doing a radio show on Thursday night with Mike Leach. All those things, all that is to get to Saturday. And if I've done my job through the week, once I get there, I can relax and enjoy it because I don't have to have this fear that I'm not prepared. People joke all the time they have these nightmares about they're standing up talking to a crowd, they don't have anything on, or whatever. I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat wondering, do I know enough about Team X? Have I forgotten this about our team? That scares me more than anything about being behind an open mic for 6 hours during the day. It's the thing that kind of keeps me going, I think.
We have a new course in the Department of Communication in sports announcing. You've been kind enough to come and talk with the students. For those who might be watching this, what advice would you give for aspiring sports announcers?
Network with everyone that you can. Talk to as many people, meet as many people as you can in the industry. Don't be afraid of criticism because this is a very visible, very subjective industry. There are going to be plenty of people that are going to like you. There are going to be a lot of people who don't. Put your work in front of someone who will be honest with you and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't, and embrace what they don't like and be willing to change. I would say that first and foremost. And beyond that, repetition is everything. I love talking to your students, and you got some really bright people in the program here, and I'm real happy about that. But I can stand up there and talk to them until I'm blue in the face. Until they go and do it, there's no substitute for that. I mean, I can only get you so far. So those are the two big things: networking, repetition. If you do those things, you're going to have success. Anybody can do it. You just got to be willing to put in the time and the work to do those things. And if you will, you can be successful doing this.
In our final moments here, final 30 seconds, give us a quick anecdote about working with our coach, Mike Leach.
He is different than any other coach I have ever worked with, hands down. He will answer anything that you ask him, save questions about injuries because he doesn't like to talk about those things. He's had the healthiest football team in college football for 20 years, and partner, that's not going to change, is what he told me. But at his core, he's a very intelligent guy, wonderful to talk to, and he's really old school. People talk about, here's a guy who throws a ball over the yard, that's revolutionary, it's different. He's an old school football coach. Hard work, discipline, play the next play, all the things you expect the successful guys to say. And he's just a joy to be around because you never know where the conversation's going to go.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for joining us here on Connection. We look forward to listening to you in all of the games throughout football and basketball season. And we thank you for watching us here on Communication Connection. We'll see you next time.